Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Landscape Photography Show. Okay, sorry about that. Not sure what happened, but anyway, again, welcome to the Landscape Photography Show. We're excited for our show tonight. We've got Gary Crabbe with us, and if you haven't seen Gary's work on Google+, then please go and check out his page, and you'll learn a lot more about him tonight as he walks us through some information. My name's Kevin Rowe. I'm from South Jordan, Utah. And my passion is to go up in the mountains, hike up there, and take lots of pictures. So I work with the landscape photography theme and the landscape photography community. And let's go over to Tom. Will you introduce yourself?
Sure, Kevin. Thank you. My name is Tom Hurl, and I'm based in Carmel, California. I'm an avid amateur photographer, and I like getting out in the woods and hiking, just like Kevin does. And I'm involved as a curator on the landscape photography theme, as well as a member of the show. So I'll pass it along to Jim.
Great.
I'm Jim Worthman, amateur photographer based in Phoenix, Arizona. And I love color and black and white landscape photography, and participate in the landscape photography theme and community, as well as the show. And Margaret.
Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Tompkins, and from the Kansas City area, Missouri, and enjoy landscape photography. I'm retired, so I love to go out and take pretty pictures of things I see. And I participate in the landscape photography theme and the show, as well as the community on Google+. So great to be here tonight. I'm really looking forward to this show.
Yeah, great. And Gary, we'll let you introduce yourself here in a minute. So I'm going to move right away into our show starters. So let me just share my screen here, and get that. Okay, and so this was my choice. This is Kristen Repscher, and this is a picture of Lake Moran, and I just really liked the canoes there. Really make that shot. It's obviously an amazing place anyway. One of the more photogenic areas, but the black and white processing, as well as the composition, putting those canoes in there, really stood out for me. So I really enjoyed that one. And Jim, I believe this is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. That's an iconic view of Multnomah Falls in Oregon by Mark Meyer. He shared also a color version, but I really liked his mono treatment. You know, the composition is beautiful, and especially the light. The way it's dark tones, but he's got highlights in just the right spots. And of course, his monochrome processing was top-notch.
Great. Thanks, Jim. And Margaret.
This is the one I selected. It's from Pradeep Lunda, and it's Monument Valley, and I just love the wispy clouds. I don't think you see clouds like that too often out there at Monument Valley, and he just captured a beautiful panorama here, so I just couldn't resist this. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, and Tom.
Hi, this was submitted by Randy Butters, and I really like the leading line of the road. I like the texture in the grass. I like the red barn, and I like the soft pastel colors of the grass and the sky. So this really appealed to me as a wonderful landscape shot.
Yeah, I love it. You know, I'd say it's the kind of place that I want to be at, but I'm looking at it, just sneezing looking at it. So. And Gary, this was your choice.
All right, this is a photo by Jean-Marc Deltome, or Deltome. I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name. But as I was looking through all the photos, this one jumped out at me as having a really unique, strong graphic vision. And one of the things I just loved was the complete range of tonality and the way my eye flowed through the image and all the different things there were to explore in there. So I thought it was a great shot.
Yeah, great. And I speak for all of us. There was a lot of great shots in there this time, so we appreciate that, and keep submitting those photos, and eventually you might get chosen to be on the show starter. So from here, we're just going to go over to Gary. And Gary, why don't you, before you start, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then go ahead with your presentation.
Sure, okay. My name's Gary Crabbe. I am the owner of Enlightened Images Photography, and I have been a professional outdoor landscape scenic travel photographer for about 15 years. Before that, I ran the stock agency for a famous National Geographic and adventure photographer named Galen Rowell. I was the one who was responsible for his image library. That got me my start in photography. Before that, I was getting a degree in the theater, and I was a breakfast cook. So that was my full preparation for entry into the world of photography. And over the course of, I guess, the last 15 years, I've managed to put out 7 books, including my latest, which is Photographing California, Volume 1 North. And it's actually won an award, so it's been a real good response to the book lately. So that's me in a nutshell. Now, as for the presentation, let me do the little screen share now. Let's see if this works. I'm a techno newbie, so kind people here have shown and told me how to do this. And let's see. So, do we see my logo now?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Now, so I should mention that despite my having a degree in the theater, I sometimes get a little bit of nervous stage fright. It causes me to stumble, and sometimes I have to restart. So, just as a momentary thing, I'll warn you, please forgive me if that happens, but let's go forward. So tonight, my plan is to show you a collection of images that I hope will inspire you to go out and create. I'd like to leave a few earworms in your head if I can, that hopefully you can carry forward. But as part of the show, my goal is to show you what I consider some amazingly dramatic and colorful sunsets, some beautifully composed and well-lit details of nature, wildlife. You guys having problems seeing the wildlife? He's right there. And some shots of emotive shots, I call them, of people out enjoying themselves in nature and the environment. So, with that, now, wait, that didn't feel right, did it? All right, so here I'm going to go one more time. Take 2. Try this again. Let's see, what was I going to show? Oh, dramatic and colorful sunsets. Beautifully composed and well-lit intimate scenes of nature, wildlife,
Awesome.
and emotive shots of people out and enjoying and connecting with nature and the environment.
You had me there, Gary.
That feels a little better, doesn't it?
Yes, you had me.
Hope we didn't lose anybody.
Yeah, what is the difference between these shots? And from when I first started taking photos to now is a long road. But the difference can be summed up by a combination of working with the light, with landscape, and personal vision. And that is the theme of my presentation tonight. I normally run this just about an hour. They asked me to keep it to about 45 minutes, so I am just going to roll through this material. I should note here that if people have questions about certain shots, a great way, rather than interrupting, might be, save it for comments that when the show gets posted online. If you've got a shot or a question about a specific image, ask there, and then I'll be happy to answer it and follow up later after this, as well as take questions when I'm set and ready and done. So, light in the landscape and our personal vision. This, as nature photographers, is what drives us. It gives us the motivation, the fuel to get out there in the field. And this applies to photographers worldwide. And in the words of Star Trek, it's this passion that causes us to, I'm going to try and say it with a little James T. Kirk intonation, reach out and explore brave new worlds, to boldly go where no one has gone before. Except what's more likely in the case of national parks and icons around the world, you could make that where thousands or perhaps millions have gone before. Now, one of the things, because of the changes in the way the internet has brought things to us, delivered us to us in our homes, on our phones, and digital photography, there's an abundance of images out there that are becoming known as these great photographic icons. And these icons and our exposure to them causes photographers to want to just go out there and for some reason get our own version of these places. And in some cases, the draw to sometimes sensitive environments is really causing us to do what I call loving these places to death. And more, it's the drive that each photographer has to go out and get their own version that is sometimes turning these great locations into almost a zoo-like atmosphere. And while I have nothing against photographing the icons, and one of the prefaces that I'll include here is I do it. I think every photographer does it. It is part of learning photography. And what I've come to learn after this is how we develop our personal vision. We see that which inspires us, and then we want to go out and copy other people's visions that have inspired us, and eventually, if you've been to the icons, that's great. I say all for it. If you haven't been there, go do it. Get the shots out of your system, and then go push yourself forward. Because photography, even in workshops and tours like you see here, they're not group activities. Photography is something we do by ourselves. It is us. We are out there. It is us against the world. We look through the lens. We decide how to use our tools. We decide how to compose it, and we decide when to press the button. So even when you're at an iconic location that is buzzing like photographers, this shot here taken in Mono Lake, by building a sensitivity and looking at the world around us, we can often go out and at these places come back with very rewarding, I call them personal trophies, as opposed to, quote unquote, the trophy shots. So how do we do this? How do we push our own vision forward and create works that are inspiring both to ourselves, satisfying to ourselves, as well as rewarding and inspiring to other people? Well, the first step, research and planning. And this is something I've been doing for years. Now I'm actually the author of a book that people can use to help them along their way, but knowing where to go, when to go, how to get there, the lay of the land, all that stuff, very, very important. Having a personal connection to where you're going, soaking in the environment, and developing a relationship with that subject that you are going to shoot. You know, nature photography shouldn't necessarily be work as a 4-letter word. It should be fun, which is as a 3-letter word, and part of that is tapping into our own personal connections. We also need to know about our equipment, how to use the tools that we have at our disposal, as well as things like natural light, weather conditions, and how that affects the rendition of subject matter that we're seeing. And when you do all those same things, and if you get lucky and you are managed to put yourself in the right place at the right time, we've heard the saying, chance favors the prepared. And nowhere is that more important than in something like photography, where when everything comes together, bam, we get a photograph that hopefully means something to us or to those people that are looking at it. What this does, this combination, can literally mean the difference between this and this. Planning, knowledge, equipment, passion, weather, and lighting. And when you look at a photo like this, as well as any photo, you know, our goal is, and the one thing I tell people over and over and over again, and especially nature photographers and many photographers just starting out don't have this kind of built-in conscious awareness. Photography is a communication tool. Photos speak to us. This is why they say pictures are worth 1,000 words, where every photo tells a story. So what do we do to help tell these stories in a better and more personalized fashion? Well, one of our jobs is to create order out of chaos. And this was something I was very fortunate to have learned from my old boss. And what does that mean? Well, the world is a chaotic place. And our job is to come along and impose some kind of semblance of order between all these chaotic elements so that elements relate to one another and we can look at something and go, aha, we have imposed order out of chaos to present a meaning or a message. Now, I do not do art titles with my images, but when people ask, I don't know, can you guys see my mouse right there? No?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so there's nothing more chaotic than a moving cloud. And what do I mean by creating order out of chaos? If you look at how the shape of the clouds mimic the shape of the rock, that's a prime example out of matching something that's chaotic and creating an artificial sense of order out of it. And this one, technically, this image is called Order and Chaos Converge Near the Summit of El Capitan in Yosemite Valley. We also use composition. Now, I paid about $400 for this graphic here, so I want everyone to appreciate just how high-tech the world of photography has become. But composition is about nothing other than the placement of elements within the frame and drawing relationships between those elements. Now, one of the other things I heard that was so great is when looking at a scene, and this is actually one of the very first slide images I ever took. I mean, this one goes all the way back to 1990, and after going through a number of workshops, one of the things I always heard, and I continue to tell my students when I'm working with them or doing portfolio reviews, is if it's not adding something new or important to the scene or the story that you are trying to tell, get rid of it. And I liken it to prime factors in math. We all learned when we were kids how to reduce numbers down to their prime factors or fractions and something like this. And so in contrast, you know, our eyeballs have an amazing zoom lens quality. And when I strip out everything that's redundant in a particular scene, and I use my little zoom lens eyeballs to focus in on whatever it is about a scene that I like, I instantly know where to point my camera at any given scene. And I know what stuff should be left out, what stuff needs to be left in. And that's what I call, sometimes I say, the composition just speaks to me. So when we talk about drawing relationships between elements and communicating with our photos, we want that communication to be instant. So when we put something in relationship to another, this is our choice as a photographer. It is only us that can do that in our photos. No viewer in the world, without the aid of Photoshop, is going to be able to see this camper in any other place of the photo than where I chose to put it. And where I chose to put it is where I felt I was making the strongest possible connection to the scene, the environment, whatever it happens to be. Composition also helps make things relative to one another. Every element in a photograph has its own level of importance, its own level of visual weight. Light has weight, shadow has weight, subject has weight, empty space has weight. Composition is about balancing all those things out so that when a viewer sees our photo, there is no ambiguity about what we are trying to say. The message of our photo should be as clear as the words on this sign. And it's the strength of that clarity that a viewer is going to get, and hopefully when we say we evoked an emotional response, we didn't trigger it. We had a connection to what we were photographing. The viewer comes and looks at our photograph with their own baggage, their own background. But when those elements meet and converge on the photo and the photo is clear, the meaning should be instantaneous. And just like the bird seems to be reacting to the words on the sign, viewers will react, whether positively, your photo is clear, or negatively, because your photo is confusing. That's the way viewers work. And one of the things we as photographers need to do, we need to figure out how to solve problems to make our story, the communication part of our photography, more important. Now here's a great example of trying to solve a problem. And as a reporter would say, if writing an old newspaper story, it's our job to flush out the story of our photo or whatever we're trying to say. Here's a great little church in the backroads valleys of Santa Barbara. I saw this, oh, gotta stop, gotta go take some pictures. I was doing a book on California's wine country, and so here I came across this nice little spot, and there, off to the side of the church, was this very cool little statue. And I thought, oh, the statue is great, had nice detail, and I loved its great open, outstretched arms. But the problem is, it was away from the church, and it wasn't even facing the church. So I decided to play around and say, you know, work with different angles because I really like this outstretched arms, but still no relation to what really first caught my attention was the church. Sure, the statue has some message of spirituality about it, but I couldn't combine the two because I was concentrating on this great outstretched arms and the frontal detail of the statue until I walked around the back. And then I realized I didn't need the front of the statue. And the moment I let go of that particular need or interest, my problem was suddenly solved. The weight of the outstretched arms, now seeming to cradle the church, provided exactly the message that I was trying to get across. Now, this is a great travel example, but the same kind of problem solving holds true for nature photography. We also need to know about this, because without this, all you got is a black frame. This is light. Let there be no misunderstanding. When the words were uttered, let there be light, that was the most important thing that could be uttered in terms of photography and the universe at all. So we need to know about this. We need to know how to use it well, and when it's not working for us. One of the earworms I always tell my students over and over again, and hopefully this gets around, but this is what I say, and I'll continue to say it for as long as I'm teaching. A boring subject in great light will always, emphasize the word always, make a better photograph than a great subject in boring light. Go through that one again. A boring subject in great light. This is a parking lot street lamp and two pigeons. It is the most boring subject in the world, but the light and the moment make it perfect. Boring subject, great light, always better than a great subject in boring light. Some light is good for certain things. Some light is good for big scenic shots. This is not the kind of light you want when you're down inside a forest. You like soft light, but conversely, soft light is not really good for big landscapes. So when I see soft light like this, I'm thinking, okay, smaller. I love fog, details like that. You can get in, and that soft, even light is what really makes all the details of a scene pop out. One of the times where you can get exceptional lighting is when you meet the edge of lighting conditions. Now here's a great example of fog fringing on the redwood forest in the north coast. And when this happens, you can get some amazing conditions. And with this image, I want to repeat another earworm. If it looks good, shoot it. If it looks better, shoot it again. The reason I say this is because 20 years ago, I was racing to an old college roommate's house, and I drove by the most spectacular rays of golden sunset passing through the fog in the redwood forest I'd ever seen in my life. And I said, I'll get it next time. Well, 20 years worth of next times later, I have still never seen an example as good as what I zipped past at 50 miles an hour thinking I'd get it later. If it looks good, shoot it. If it looks better, shoot it again. Now in these moments, this transitory light, these are when we can get some of our most special nature scenes. But once this fog clears out and all that's left is bright sunlight and dark shadows, the forest is not the place I want to be out photographing. We can also kind of alter mood with how we choose to present our image. Now this nice little detail shot was taken with a kind of high key, so I've got a more whiter background. But this shot and this shot were taken at the same time and the same place. Exposure is how we regulate the amount of light reaching our sensor, but it is also how we manipulate how our photos are perceived in terms of their visual weight, of their mood that they're going to impart, whether it's a dark scene or a light scene. Now, these days, you can come up with mixes of light that are so absurd, they're even beyond any single frame capture. So when you've got sunlight mixed with shade, you expose for the sunlight, the shade goes black. Expose for the shade, everything that's in the sunlight gets burned out. So nowadays we have HDR and blending frames, and you can put together images that just would not have been possible with film. And that is truly one of the great things about digital photography, but just like many things, it's knowing when to use it in moderation that can sometimes lead you to a successful shot or something that looks like Ken Kesey brought with him on a 69 acid trip. One of the things that I remember learning about growing up in the film days was learning how to see how film saw the world. And film, looking through a camera, did not see the world the way our eyes see. And while the exposure latitude of digital photography has made it easier for us, when I was growing up and learning about film, I got to the point where I could look at a scene like this and know this could be how it would be rendered. And that furthermore, I did not need the trees to be green. I did not need every detail to be exposed. That shadow, you know, we call photography the art of fixing a shadow. A shadow has its own weight. Our brain assumes these trees are green. We don't need all that, and sometimes shadow becomes a graphic element on its own. So from the same place, I want to give an idea of some sense of the differences in natural light. So here, same area. This is from the rim of Crater Lake looking west toward the sunset. So if you can picture this, you are standing somewhere and someone is pointing a flashlight at your face. You are seeing the warm light of the sun as it passes through the atmosphere coming at you. 12 hours later, at dawn, someone is now holding the flashlight behind your head. That blue line across the top is the shadow of the Earth, with the pink light being sunrise light coming through the atmosphere. And that blue light descends until you get the first moment where sunrise light hits the landscape in front of you, causing a front-lit landscape scene. Now here's an example of just one particular transition, all shot from the same place, same date. This is what we call the blue hour. And there is a particular moment in time. In fact, I was just at a workshop at Point Reyes today when everything was cloudy, and I said the only color we're going to get is at that blue hour. So maybe 40 minutes or so before sunrise, there is a very small window of time where I learned that you can look out the window. Let's say it's your bedroom window, and you look up in the sky, and you cannot tell if the sky is perfectly clear or perfectly cloudy. And in fact, this image, there is both cloud and clear sky. A few minutes later, as the Earth's shadow starts descending, the twilight wedge coming down over the western horizon at dawn, we can just make out the fog layer between the Earth's shadow and that area of the sunlight coming down. A few moments later, the sunrise light is now equal with the top of the cloud layer. But yet there is no sunlight yet on the lighthouse. This is still just before what I would experience as an actual sunrise. Once the sunlight crests the horizon behind us, this is what we get as a front-lit scene looking out with the sun coming in over our shoulder. And now you can clearly see the difference between the cloud and the clear sky above it. Backlit also, sometimes what we call the edge of storm light is great, and along the Pacific coast here, this can be a wonderful thing. Here, again, a totally cloudy sky. Just this thin little wedge where I could see some light was coming through, and I knew I might get a great backlit scene. As the sun neared down there, I could see the light getting brighter, and all I needed to know was that the sun popped through and just lit up and created a backlit scenario. These last three shots were shot on film, by the way. Great subject. Boring light. Half Dome in Yosemite. Great subject. Nicer light. Definitely a much more working photograph. Here's a scene just like what you saw with the lighthouse a moment ago. Storm clouds, but yet there was a wedge broken up where clear sky was off to the west. This is what Half Dome looked like before the light had gotten underneath the cloud. This is what it looked like once the light had gotten underneath and was directly lighting up Half Dome's northwest face. These also were shot on film. Here's a digital shot where you can see just the tip of sunlight on the Half Dome and all the shaded area below it. One of the things about using film was, oh, the joy of just being able to lock your shutter open and go to sleep for 5 or 6 hours without having to worry about taking 100,000 shots if you wanted to get star trails. Here is a moonless shot. Shutter just locked open for several hours. The moon comes up. The moon is just reflected sunlight. Much less exposure time. This is one of the ways we can create some drama in a nighttime landscape is with the moonlight. And nowadays with digital photography we get these great sensitivity ranges from ISO 3200 and above where you can get these short exposures, beautiful shots of the Milky Way galaxies. I don't do a huge amount of night photography, but it is nice knowing the technology has made it so available to us. So here's an example. We've heard the phrase alpenglow. Alpenglow is a brief, momentary bit of sunlight as it hits the ground. It signifies when the light has been traveling through the atmosphere. Most of the blue color has been stripped out of it because of its travel through the atmosphere, and whammo, when it hits something, we see it as red. And the difference between those first few moments when alpenglow hits a mountain peak versus the few minutes later when the alpenglow has vanished and light is on the land in front of us is fairly drastic. And again, just here's an example of how a landscape looks front lit. How the same landscape looks backlit. And now the backlight is adding a more exciting fringe to it. Then once the sun goes down, you know, we have what we call open shade. And if you're shooting somewhere, this is when the light of this big blue umbrella that's behind you is illuminating the landscape. And that umbrella, if you turn and face away from where the sun was, has enough light and color to provide a great sense of detail on the land. May just require a longer exposure to bring out, you know, a balance between the detail and the color. Spin back around towards where the sun is, and you get the bright color in the sky becomes the subject. And what else you see tends to become backlight or without detail, unless, of course, you're going to go into some crazy HDR or dynamic range extension. But backlighting is one of the great keys of creating some dramatic photographs. And so I always say, you know, point your camera in the direction of the sun. Now, don't look directly in the sun with a 500mm telephoto lens. That may be the last thing you see. But anytime you see backlighting, there's photographic potential. Backlighting is what we see when we see these fall colors on trees just kind of bursting out, and they get this electric glow. And when you can line up that backlit electric glow against a darker background, you create visual contrast. And the tension that happens between the light and the dark areas gives our image more visual power. And so that's one of the things I'm often looking for. And so I may see a scene like this. This is dogwoods in Yosemite Valley, blooming during the spring. Now, I see a mixed up jumble of daylight and shade and all sorts of stuff. But in this exact same scenario, I was able to focus on something that was sunlit and make this exposure. This is actually photographed against the shaded trunk of a tree and just letting the exposure dictate. If I had done this where I wanted to show both the flower and the tree, I would have had a completely different photo. So sometimes black, the lack of shadow detail, can be a very important thing that, especially in this day of HDR and dynamic range, I think some photographers tend to not even consider, but it is visually a very graphic element. We also have reflected light. And reflected light is great whether you're shooting city skyscrapers at sunset or lakes out in the wilderness. But one of the things we should know is that the light that is being reflected, especially off water, will always be 2 stops darker than whatever is reflecting it. That is physics of light. So this, back in the film days, we had split neutral density filters invented, and they were the tool. They were like American Express. Do not leave home without them. If you ever wanted that nice balanced exposure, you grabbed a split filter and you put it on in front of your camera. Nowadays, with the expanded dynamic range, I may not use the split filters as much as I used to, but there are still a lot of times when they're highly valued in terms of getting more of your capture right in the field, so you don't need to spend as much time processing multiple photos sitting at a computer. Here's a great example of modern dynamic range. This was shot with my Nikon D800. This is a single frame. So you can see that you can really start pulling out a lot of great detail with modern cameras. So that is one of the great joys of where the technology is headed. Here is another example, flavored light. The difference between this shot and the spray in this shot, 30 minutes. Show that again. That is the difference in color 30 minutes makes as the sun is approaching the horizon. The blue is getting stripped out of the light, and the light is getting redder and redder. Now these next 4 shots were all shot on film, so it's not Photoshop, it's not HDR, it's not anything. Straight single frame film captures. Harsh light, strong shadows. Soft pastel light, softer shadows with more detail. Just a variation in time and lighting conditions, nothing more. These are lenticular clouds, falsely sometimes called a Sierra wave cloud. When I see these and clear skies off to the west, I know it's going to be like Christmas time for photographers, because once the sun has set below the horizon and the light is still shooting up into the sky, these clouds turn a magnificent, brilliant orange-red color, and they are like the great photographer's dream come true when they do happen. Here's a nice little moonshot I caught one day over the buttermilks in the eastern Sierra at sunrise. Nice little shot, happy with it, moved on. Then at another time, this was actually taken the morning of my boss's funeral memorial in Bishop. So it's kind of got an emotional tag for me. But I had gone and photographed this and set it so that I knew I would be working with the shadows and the first light of sunrise. But then look what happened a few minutes later once the light was on the rocks in front of me. Now, this one I actually call, this was in the area of Gale and Split Rock and Cloud. But look how important that dark shadow is to creating a line and composition through that frame. And if I had gone in with some kind of HDR and tried to get as much detail out of that shadow area as existed in the other sunlit areas, the visual impact of this photo would be reduced drastically. And between that dark shadow on the foreground rock and the background mountain having fallen into shadow, really gave this image some great rewarding depth. Position is another thing. Position counts so much, and it's about how we draw relationships to what we're shooting. What the heck is the story we're trying to tell about? This is a photo about the trees and the mountains. Really boring photo, nothing great. I'll tell you how lazy this photo was. I was sitting in my chair with the feet up on a campfire ring at a campsite, pointing my campfire camera straight up at these trees going click. But I knew what I wanted. I wanted to show how important positioning was. That these trees do not fit with the background mountains. And I said to myself, how do I show? How do I make these trees intimately relate to the background? I had to move my position. And what happened was, fortunately, there was no campfire going, but I had to stand literally over the center of the campfire ring, straddling feet on either side, holding my camera up just high enough so that I create a direct marriage between the line created by the trees and the line created by the background mountains. Now there is a direct relationship between disparate subjects, creating order out of chaos. Movement can also be great for things like sun stars, where you position yourself just perfectly and get this brief moment of sunlight that radiates through a scene. And this image is actually now featured on the Nikon website along with its companion, this shot, which I was able to get moments after the sun set behind the mountain. All I had to do was run about 30-40 feet uphill till I caught up with the shadow, get in position, and let the sun set a second time and be able to get a second unique composition and framing. Now, having drawn back onto that first shot of the moon setting over the Buttermilk Mountains, I came across this scene, a nice little scene, drove up over Tioga Pass, greeted by the moon at sunrise. Great, all very well and fine. But I thought about that old shot with the moon on the edge of Mount Humphreys and said, gee, I wonder if I could do something similar. So by moving my position and waiting for the exact moment in time, I was able to come up with this shot, making the very deliberate choice of when to press the shutter exactly at the moment when the moon was not above that tiny little rock pinnacle, not when it was already fully submerged, but just resting to really emphasize not only the connection, but this higher kind of universal balance. Rainbows are another great thing. Rainbows we can move. My old boss's most famous photograph is a rainbow over the Potala Palace, which the story goes he ran for 1.5 miles after inviting other people to do the same with him at about 10,000 feet in the Himalaya. Bam, he was able to position a rainbow right over the palace. And so using that, this exact same rainbow, the other side of this rainbow, by just finding myself along the road where I was shooting this, oops, I was able to put this directly over a farmhouse in now what I call an homage. This is Rainbow over the Meat and Potatoes Palace. Because rainbows move with us. And moving rainbows, this is the longest moving rainbow I had ever seen. I saw this rainbow lasting for about 45 minutes through the Alturas Valley up in Northern California, even as I was driving for about 20 miles. Rainbow just stayed there, traveled with me. Finally, came across this one barn. Show you how important light is. You see the light in the background on the buildings below the rainbow. I looked behind me. I could see another area where light was coming through the storm clouds, and as soon as that light reached me, this is what the scene became. Within 30 seconds, another minute, that light had moved off into the distant field. The barn fell back in shadows. Again, light off, light on makes such a world of difference. We do not photograph things. We photograph light. Now here's an example. Sometimes people got preconceptions in their mind about what they're going to shoot, where they're going to shoot, and this was my first time in the Grand Tetons, and by God, I was going to go get the Ansel Adams Snake River shot. That first time there, no problems, bam, I'm going there. My wife and I had camped on the west side of the Tetons, woke in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. under a horrendous thunderstorm, drove several hours around to the east side, showed up at the parking lot before dawn, got out there, clouds everywhere. Now when we got there, there were a few people standing there, but before long, there were clouds of interlocked tripods. So much to the point where when this light happened behind me, I actually had to physically crawl under my tripod legs, spin my camera around, photograph this scene several times, drop back under my tripod, turn around, and then get this light as it came across the plateau. Now I heard some people next to us, none of them shooting. One person actually asked, as I am busy, I am busting through rolls of film. I probably shot 4 rolls of film, just crap, clicking away. Persons right within earshot asked their companion, should I photograph this? Shouldn't we take a picture of it? To which their partner responds, no. You want to wait until the light is on the mountain. Well, if it looks good, shoot it. If it looks better, shoot it again. And you know what? The light never made it onto the mountain. Everyone else went home not having photographed, frustrated about the storm light, saying, oh well, and I wound up selling this image bunches of times, including for a cover use by LL Bean and all sorts of other fun stuff. If it looks good, shoot it. If it looks better, shoot it again. Eventually, a few days later, I was able to go back and get the shot I wanted. Now, photographers also have subject blindness, like blinders that horses wear. Now, I had previously been out to Mesa Arch. I had this shot taken on film, and I was really happy because my agents accepted this 35mm film into their files along with other photographers that had other shots of Mesa Arch, all shot on larger format 4x5. So I was happy to have this shot. I then got put on assignment for a travel magazine, go out, spend some time in Moab, and I wanted to get a shot of people photographing at Mesa Arch because even back then it was a popular draw. So I show up there on the morning for my assignment. This is the light. And there are probably 20 photographers out there. All their cameras are all lined up. They're standing back about 20 feet, talking in groups of 5 and 6, chit-chatting in German, French, English, Scandinavian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, you name it. Every language under the sun was being spoken next to that arch, but no one was taking pictures. So, of course, no one minded when I stepped in front of their tripod to get this particular reference shot. I then saw what was starting to happen, so I maneuvered myself into this, how do you like that for graphics, this great position up on top of the arch, because what was going on behind the arch was this. And again, just like in the Tetons, I'm shooting film. I'm throwing off a half a roll of film on this scene. I'm getting wide angle horizontals. I'm getting verticals that can be used for a cover. I look over, and not one person has moved to their cameras or is photographing this. And I heard someone say, again, shouldn't we be shooting this? And again, the reply was, no, because the light isn't good on the arch yet. No one else shot this sunrise. For shame, if you call yourself a landscape photographer and are so blinded by the subject that you have in your brain that you cannot see light like this happening. Eventually, everyone left. There was no other light. No light got better on the arch. I actually had to stop and grab two people. Hey, guys, please, just for my magazine, be my model. Go in and let me shoot you taking some photos. So, of course, these couple nice guys, happy to oblige me, and I got at least something I could use. Icons. Oh, what better icon is there in the U.S. than Half Dome? And that tree. Some dude named Adams took a picture. Tree, Half Dome. It's a great combination. One of my favorite photographers, William Neal, actually has my favorite shot of this tree covered in snow with golden light, Half Dome and storm clouds in behind. And there are times when lining this tree up with Half Dome is great. It's got this wonderful kind of mirrored shape about it. And when the conditions are right, they line up perfectly. They re-emphasize one another. But why isn't Half Dome in this shot? The reason Half Dome isn't in this shot is because it wasn't part of this story. This story here was about the light, the tree, the mist coming over the valley, the background. Half Dome was just this big, white, shaded, ugly blob in morning light. It had no reason to be part of this photo. And therefore, by focusing on just what was important, I could keep the meat of this image just right. Another example, following the light. I hadn't been to Mount Rainier in 20 years. I'm there on family vacation. I show up. It's the icon spot, Reflection Lake. I'm watching other photographers click, 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 click. What do I notice? I notice the light coming through the trees. And that's what I start photographing. And I glance over, and everyone else continues to shoot that same shot of the mountain, missing all of these great moments. Because what is it we photograph? It's not things, it's light. Fill the frame with what the light is doing. Let the light dictate your subject. When you match the right light on, you will know what the right subject is, and then you can all put it in the camera. I have been to Delicate Arch. Shot the arch. Yay! Haven't been back to the arch since there. I've been to North Window Arch. Shot this. This is a little spot. People climb in, want to get their shots. Generally a small, crowded spot. But you know what felt much better to me? When I didn't go there at sunrise, trying to get this postcard shot that everyone has already taken, that everyone has got, and this is just my version. What does this say that someone else's photo doesn't say? Nothing. This shot, however, shows the sunrise light from North Window Arch shining directly on Turret Arch. That kind of unique combination, incredibly unique. And I guarantee you there were no other busloads of photographers who were trying to wedge me out of a tiny little spot. And especially, you know, this is a place where if you step into someone's scene, they tend to yell at you, "Get out of my shot!" Well, you know what? Here's another scene where shadow help makes the shot. And in this case, the person putting them in the environment worked so well. Another shot that I completely blew, this was a multi-row D800 panorama that I went to shoot. Found out after I shot it, it was all done at 3200 because I was shooting the night before. Totally worthless. Did I feel any loss at this shot? No. Why? Because it's been done a million times. It doesn't mean anything personally to me. What meant more to me personally was this shot. And one of my good friends, Guy Tal, great photographer, he looks at this and goes, "Man, I got the exact same shot." I hadn't seen his before, but it didn't surprise me that he had the same shot because photographers who know what they're doing are looking for light. Subway, another D800 pano. Simple. I didn't go there for a picture or to create anything new. I went for the hike. The photograph was my side reward. I just focused on what I like. I didn't expect to get anything new or wildly unique, and yet still, this image also now being featured on the Nikon site. To me, what's more personal is going places that are a little bit off the map, where you don't have to fight the crowds, where you can just respond to the environment and not have to worry about 30 or 40 people out there trying to do the same thing or crowd you into one little spot. This is the shot I took that caused me to lose that earlier D800 pano, by the way. So I'm just going to flash through a couple other things. I know running quick on time here. The wave, again, people, there's this shot. How many times have you seen shots of this great little spot in the wave? Who's done it with people? Not many. But for, you know what, as a working photographer, this is the shot that sells. I like finding these smaller little detail shots that maybe people haven't seen. Maybe you can all see the little doggy space in the rock wall. Or coming across something that is just completely unique, that hasn't been seen or done 1,000 times before. That, to me, is the real personal reward about kind of pushing your own vision forward. One of the great places for that, oh my God, the racetrack in Death Valley. Supposed to get there right as the light's coming up. I've got this little scene in mind. You know what? A photographer walks up, see his shadow going right across my frame. He's not thinking anything about it, but I am not the type to go, yo, dude, get out of my shot. My job as a photographer, reframe. I could have moved somewhere else. I don't have any more right to be in this place than he does, vice versa. So I chose to make the shot about him. I then went off once he left and just kept working on my merry little way until eventually, you know, I find something that really, for me, typified the racetrack. But I also want to say, if you see signs, don't go over the waterfall, don't climb Half Dome during a thunderstorm, don't walk on the wet playa. I'm sure we all saw this horrible scene as it got viralized through social media a few months ago. Please don't be the guy that goes out and seeks your reward at the expense of doing this. Let me climb off my soapbox. Another shot of Death Valley working on a book. Went out to go find this scene I already had on film. I was trying to match up a scene for a book that was dealing with California history, this old USGS shot. I eventually went out there and got a nice new shot on digital photography. I'm all great with it. But as I was walking back from the scene, a German tourist passed me. And we chit-chatted for a moment, and he winds up going off. And as I look behind me, there he is. And just instantly I knew. Adding the person in that shot completely changed the story behind the photo, giving it so much more context. I then saw this great cloud. The only way, again, problem solving. I could not get this entire cloud and the valley in one even wide angle frame. Solution, this is a 3-frame panorama in order to get the cloud floating like a UFO over the valley 5,000 feet below. Other places where sometimes panorama is the only solution. The top of Cinder Cone in Lassen Volcanic National Park. Not even my widest angle could get close. Panorama, stitching a scene together becomes the solution. How we solve problems to tell the story. Something could be pre-visualized. Here's a shot I had of Taft Valley, moon setting. My boss had a shot, moonset at sunrise, dawn over Taft Point. So I knew moonrise, Taft Point. I went and specifically had this pre-visualized shot in mind. After I shot this, I went around and I found my old boss's tree. And you know what? The moon was in the exact spot. And I went and I framed this. I took a couple shots. This shot means nothing to me personally. This was my boss's shot. He got a great shot. This is a copy. There is no emotional investment other than it is now just something I can show off. But as I continued to wander around, I'm like, okay, I still got the moon in the sky. What else can I shoot? Eventually, I came across something. I didn't even need the moon in my sky to pull off a successful shot. So by adjusting our perceptions, we come up with new, unique, and far more personal solutions than any other image that may have inspired us to get out to a particular place. So I got about 3 or 4 more minutes here. Going to race through just a few more examples. Another pre-visualized shot, this time a view of Half Dome. This one you worked for. This is from the top of Clouds Rest. It's a 14-mile round-trip hike from the nearest road trailhead. I wanted to be up there at sunset, and I wanted to see that light fill up the valley. So a few hours after sitting up there, this was the shot I got. And my old boss used to say, if you ever had to be someplace and you could only be there once, or it was your first time there, get as high as you can, elevation-wise, folks, elevation-wise. So when you get up high, you can see around you, thereby increasing the number of subjects you can photograph and the variety of light. Less than 20 minutes later, and looking in the opposite direction, this was the light setting over the Sierra Crest. So by all means, like I said, you know, if you see a shot of a place that inspires you, go out. Take that postcard shot. There is nothing wrong with it. As I said, this is how we learn. But once you have that in the bag, then it's the time to turn on your own personal juices and look around and see. You know, we've all got this idea. Right now, a new icon in California is this little arch by Mount Whitney. People love coming to photograph it, and everyone wants their particular shot. But the problem is, now it's become one of these love-to-death places, and you go out there, and if you happen to stumble across a workshop, there are going to be about 14 or 15 photographers all lumped in a spot no bigger than where those 3 people are standing in the lower left-hand corner of this image. That happens. You know what? You can get in there if you really need the shot. Walk away. Because remember, photography is about us as individuals, how we relate to the world. And whether we're out there together or with other people, getting lost in the environment, getting lost in our surroundings, relating to them, and then putting them on to some form of visual construction that we can see through a camera lens is really what this is about. It's not copycat 101. This is about you and your world and what you see. Tell us your story. Is it a big story? Is it a little intimate story? What do you need to provide a context? What does something work with, work without, need, or not need? 2 totally different stories can be made with simple choices in the same spot. What do you find important? What are you trying to say? I don't want to know what I'm trying to say. I want to see what you're trying to say. Become a photojournalist of nature. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, we all think of photojournalists. Bam! You catch that one particular moment of peak action. That one moment where everything stops and becomes frozen at its absolute prime best instant. When we see those moments, we viscerally react to them. The same thing holds true for our nature and travel. It doesn't need to be wham bam in your face. It can be subtle. It's about this moment, this feeling, this place, at this time, this iconic archetypal moment that we can all look at, and yes, we can all relate something to. The same holds true in nature. Combine the elements so that they are at their peak relationship, that perfect moment, the light, the subject. Let go of your preconceptions and photograph what's in front of you and what's working with the light. Catch those instant moments. Develop a way to see and isolate chaotic moments that somehow now feel completely natural and ordered. Subtle moments. Special given moments. But again, here you see, it is how we use composition, lighting, tools, techniques, all about building a relationship to a subject and a moment. And whether that's a big, bold, wild sunset, a more intimate scene, someplace that's wild and maybe you don't get to very often, maybe someplace just down the street that you can visit over and over again. Different moments, different feeling. But just as with nature, there are always those peak moments. And when you catch those peak moments, this is when the ultimate reward happens. It's not about, I just got a nice shot at the Grand Canyon. It's not about, I just went and did the subway. It's about your connections to your place. And so when you time this and you are reactive to the scenes that are in front of you, and you can draw on your years of experience and learning, you can do like I did in this particular scene. Wow, here's a nice shot. It's El Capitan. Where am I? Someplace wild? No, I'm in the middle of a road. I see this shot in my mind, but yet I am receptive enough, watching my surroundings, to have seen this raven flying at me and knowing in one fell instance I'd have just a quick chance, instinct, passion, and vision take over, shutter speed, aperture thrown way open, one click, one frame only as the bird passes overhead, and bam, you get to walk away with the ultimate trophy of nature photography, something that will be yours and yours alone forever. And when that happens, that's when the lightning strikes. That's when the magic happens. So I encourage everyone, just when you're out there and struggling or looking around, if you're at a place that's been photographed before, stop, take a look around, figure out what you like, and then follow your own vision. That's my presentation. I tried to get that under as fast as I could. So
how inspiring.
My words exactly. Inspiring.
Here. Wow. All right. Have you got me back? I don't know, my camera's a little
see you.
Okay.
Yeah, great job, Gary. That was fantastic. Really appreciate it. I think this is one that I'm going to recommend everyone watch. Back on YouTube, a lot of great information, and I think that spells it out just like Jim said, inspiring, and it's got me ready. Even though I was already planning to go take some pictures tomorrow up in the mountains, I'm ready again.
Well, that's good.
So let's go ahead and move on to the portion where we do our recommended photographers, and we'll go over to Jim and have you share your screen for us.
Alrighty, there you go. And so my recommended photographer tonight is Jared Castang. And if you've watched the show for a while, you've probably seen a number of great photographers from Australia. Well, here's another one. Jared is a fine art landscape photographer from Sydney. And when you look at his stream, you'll see photographs from around the world. I mean, he has Australia, US, UK, just Iceland, a lot of different places. He conducts workshops and has won a number of awards for his landscape and wildlife photography. So I urge you to go check out his stream, and I think you'll agree he's definitely one to follow. Okay, so on to Margaret.
I'm recommending Scott Jarvie this evening, and a lot of people already have Scott circled. He has several 100,000 followers here on Google+, but he's an excellent photographer, primarily a wedding photographer out of, I believe it's Salt Lake. But he does beautiful landscapes, and here's a wonderful shot of the new LDS temple in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But I just wanted to point him out. He's been working on 2 books. He's on this Faith of America project, and he's been traveling around the country for about a year now, taking photographs of all sorts of churches and things that people find that have great faith in. So it's a book that's well into progress. And here's one of his Airstream trailer that he's been pulling around now for about a year as he travels across the country looking for wonderful churches to photograph. So, and this one just, Monument Valley, couldn't get any better. So that's my recommendation for you this evening, is Scott Jarvie.
Beautiful. Okay. Thanks, Margaret. And now, Tom.
All right, Jim. Continuing your tradition, I've got another Australian photographer, Rodney Campbell. Rodney's an amateur photographer. I guess IT is his day job, but he's got a range of different types of photos on his website. This one of the Milky Way, caught my eye as one of the more spectacular Milky Way shots I've seen in a long time. Not only does he do night shots, but he also does other type of shots. If you can flip to the next one. Yeah, I love this scene. I love the colors of the water and the clouds, and again, I really appreciate the variety he shows. So Rodney Campbell, I suggest adding him to your circles as well.
Great choice. Okay, and thanks, Tom. And now Gary, and you have 2 photographers to talk about.
I do. Listen, for here on Google+, I actually own the California and Western States community. We're now approaching, I think, somewhere close to 50,000 members, and 2 photographers, both friends of mine, helped me co-moderate it, so I got to give them equal shares and shout-outs. The first is Dan Mitchell, and Dan has one of the strongest personal visions out there that I know of. The way he constructs his photos, they're simple, elegant constructions, often very linear related. I just love looking at the way he combines elements, and he really kind of factors things down. This shot of Tufa and the storm cloud is a perfect example, and I think the other one, let's see, yes, here is the face of Half Dome. So again, I mean, he's just got this really kind of very focused, and this is the sort of personal vision that comes with just years of looking and working and developing. And so he is definitely one to keep an eye out for and watch his photos. The second is also a good friend of mine, Richard Wong, and he's a travel photographer and does a lot of nature. And he's also got one of these very just straightforward type of personal visions. It's really easy to identify. He constructs his images quite well. They're beautifully intricate on many occasions, especially this one that caught my attention. This is one of those images that I would just love to see, like one of these big 40 by 60 prints, and you just dive nose first into, and you could really soak up and enjoy. And the other image that I chose of Richard's was this local nearby scene. This is the Bolinas Ridge near the top of Mount Tamalpais, and it's, again, just capturing these perfect moments of light and line, and the way he distills a particular scene down to its essence and yet still is inviting us in to be part of his imagery. So those are my two, Dan Mitchell and Richard Wong.
Great choices.
Great.
Okay, thanks, Gary. And now on to Kevin.
Yeah, so this is Howard Brown, and I think we've all just kind of found Howard. I'm not sure if he just came on Google+, probably, because he doesn't have a lot of followers. And obviously, if you have photos like this, you're going to have a lot of followers eventually. So just really great photos. There's this one, and then I think you got one more. You know, in the Zion Narrows, and kind of like it actually goes a lot along with what Gary was talking about. You know, I mean, this is kind of an iconic shot, and you put those people in there, and it just makes it a little bit better. Gives you a little scale, and I really like it. So check him out. I think you'll like him a lot.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, thanks, Jim. Well, again, just a wonderful show. Went a little bit long, but I think it was worth it. So thank you, Gary. And please feel free to post any comments or questions, and we'll get the show notes out tomorrow, and that'll have links to the show that you can rewatch it, as well as any information for Gary, and I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yep, and can I also just mention real quick, Kevin, for anyone that is interested in finding out more about me or what I do, you know, you can go to my website. It's enlightphoto.com. I'm not busy pitching or selling lots of stuff, but if they want, there's a newsletter, email sign up. You can sign right on the homepage of the site and find out what's coming down the road for me as well.
Great. Thanks, Gary. Okay, well, we will be back in 2 weeks with another show, and look for that, and we'll have that up soon, and we will see you again.
Kevin, just a quick note, over in the landscape photography community, great contest just started there yesterday. The theme on this one is Country Roads Take Me Home. So we've got some wonderful shots already submitted there, so everybody should race right over there and post one to add to our collection.
Great. All right. We will see you again in a couple of weeks. Good night.
All right.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.